welcome to Just Run Podcast. This week is episode number 9. Reese isn't here with us this week. He's down in Bluestone in Pembrokeshire on holiday with his family, so we'll let him have the night off. Today we've got Will from Adventure Athlete, who has recently completed 496 and is just about to attempt a world record and a tire flip at a certain distance. Okay. I got a few things to say before we go into interviewing Will. Today is the launch of the Dragon Cannonball 870, which is a 870-mile relay race from Chester down to Chepstow. Team of 4, taking in turns to run along the Welsh coast. The other teammates then will get to rest and support the actual runner all the way through the 870 miles. Entries are on SI entries from today. I also like to thank Topu for providing me with 2 pairs of trail shoes from Soulmate up in Merthyr. I know Merthyr are having an event on the 26th of March where you can go in to an organised meet and try some Topu shoes out on a run. So I know I'll be going. I'm not sure about Reese yet, due to work commitments, but we will be at Soulmate in Merthyr on the 26th for the Topu meet. So come and join us if you want. Right, so our guest tonight is Will. So I'll bring him in. He can introduce himself and talk about how long he's be doing his podcast. And I've got a couple of questions to ask him along the way. So, hi, Will. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks, mate. Yourself?
Yeah, good. I've seen you went out for a run today.
I did go out for a run. I was like, I can't go on the Just Run podcast and not have run today.
Did you go up around Caerphilly in the mountains, did you?
Yeah, so I was due to do like a 30-minute easy run, and I was like, I don't want to do it on road, so I'll go up the mountain a bit and go around the trails. And I was just going to go around the trails and then back down and like make a bit of a loop, but I took a wrong turn and ended up at the top of the mountain. So
well worth it. I always find the best trails getting lost.
Yeah,
best way to do it.
Always.
So I know recently you just completed. It's Goggins? Is it Goggins?
The 496.
The 496, yeah.
So that's Sean Conway.
John Conway's 496. And to everyone, can you just explain what that is?
Yeah, so the 496 is a challenge where you run. You can do it in kilometers or miles. I know I got some stick off Bob Thomas because I chose kilometers over miles. But you run the amount of kilometers corresponding with the day of the month. So on the first day, you run 1K, second day, you run 2K, third day, you run 3K, and so on until on the last day, you run 31 kilometers, which totals 496 throughout the month.
Wow.
Yeah, quite a challenge.
But you did it.
I did just about. I scraped my way through, which I'm sure we'll get into.
So for a lot of people who don't really know you from your Instagram, you're not a big runner either, are you, really?
Well,
on like a weekly basis sort of thing.
No, and I do actually have a bone to pick with you, Nathan, because in your podcast, I can't think what episode it was. It was like 4 or 5. I think it was, where you was talking with Sophie, and you was like, oh, so my mate's doing this 496. He's not a runner. And I was like, hold up, I've completed 2 ultra marathons here. Like, kind of am a runner, but no, I get where you're coming from. I do not run regularly at all.
Yeah, that was my point. That you don't regularly run, do you? You take on the ultras, but you don't like run 30-40 mile weeks.
No,
that was my point.
That's going to be changing though, so I will be running a lot more often now.
Is that for anything?
So that's just building up my conditioning in general. I've now got a coach, which I haven't had a coach for a long time, and this is a running specific coach. So yeah, lots of running. I haven't said this too much, but I have signed up for an ultra towards the end of the year. So I'm looking at improving my time on my ultra.
Nice. So going back to the 496, how did you actually feel doing it?
Well, you know all about this. One, because I was posting daily on Instagram, and two, because we've got a group chat, and I was bitching and moaning in the group chat basically. Um, but yeah, it started off all right. Felt a couple of niggles like halfway in, and then yeah, quite a big injury towards the end, and then some illness struck as well. So lots of drama. I will admit I massively underestimated this challenge. So yeah, props to everyone that's just doing this as a general bit of training because it is brutal.
Didn't you finish it with a stress fracture?
Yeah, so on day 24, I built up to having a stress fracture in my foot. I thought it was just I've broken my ankle before, so I thought it was just strain continuing from that from a few years back and just pulling a little bit. But no, it turns out, yeah, like stress fracture in the foot. So I did what's that, 7 days running on a stress fracture, minimum half marathon a day.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that was something else. My pace drastically changed on day 24.
Could you feel any other little niggles as you were sort of like trying to compensate for your foot?
Yeah, so that started to pull on the back of my leg then. So I started to develop like a handspring, sort of like tendinopathy, I guess it like that's how it would be described. So just basically like a pulling feeling in my tendons at the back of my leg. Felt like a bit of a sharp pain. Um, but then other than that, it was just yeah, my stride became so short that I couldn't really feel anything else. It was just getting through day by day with the stress fracture.
Why did you actually do the challenge? Like, what pushed you to sort of like do it?
Um, it's a really good question. And my answer is different every time I get asked it because I don't really know. There's something about challenges that excite me. Um, if it's things that make me feel a bit uncomfortable, then it's like I'm just drawn to it. I don't know what it is inside me that loves to be pushed so hard physically, especially like being underprepared. Like you said, I'm not really a runner. Like I ran an ultra. Oh well, I've run two ultras now. I did like the most recent one was the 50K in November, and then I didn't run after that at all. I just did it. I had 2 months of no running, and then I was like, yeah, I'll do this 496. And I saw it was being posted about. I'd spoke with Bob Thomas about he did a similar thing, but he did it in miles. Um, and it just kept popping up, and then I was just like, yeah, one day I'll do it. And then Sean Conway posted being like, I'm doing an official one January. Come and join me. And I was like, oh, I might do that. But I was up in Scotland at the time. So I was like, nah, I'm probably not going to bother. I'll just enjoy my holiday. And on New Year's Day, I climbed Ben Nevis, came back down, dropped my mate off at Edinburgh train station, and I was sleeping in my car on my holiday, as you do. And it was then the second, and I was like waiting about, just enjoying like my time away from work. I'm quite busy usually, so to just be able to be out in nature was just quite nice. And I was like, you know what? Like, I definitely did 1K yesterday. I'll do two today, and I'll just start this challenge. And I just went for a run, and I was like, I'm gonna video it, do a daily post, and I was like, yeah, it doesn't seem that hard. I'll do it in kilometers, so I'm not pushing myself too much. Um, and yeah, just the naivety of it was just incredible. Like everyone that knows me, I just sign up and I start going.
So, do you think that's a result of sort of like your podcast, The Adventure Athlete, where you're sort of like pushing yourself as far as you can possibly go?
Um, I think it's the other way round, to be honest. I think my podcast originated from just how I am as a person. Like way before the podcast, I'd started doing these stupid challenges. Like in 2019, that was probably my peak year. I That was when I did my first ultra. So in my head at the start of 2019, I was like, I'm going to make a change in myself. I want to be fitter. I want to be more able to do stuff. I was already pretty strong and could do like any challenge I wanted, really. So I was like, yeah, I'll start applying myself a bit more. So I signed up for an ultra, but I'd signed up to every race distance in between as well, because I'd never run a race. I was like, why do I think I can do an ultra? So I signed up to a 5K, 10K, half marathon, marathon, and ultra. Um, and I basically only did the half marathon and the ultra, and I just didn't train for either of them. I had the whole year to train, and I didn't. So I did Cardiff half 2019, did a 1:45, um, fairly decent time considering I didn't train. And that was at the end of a 2 week firefighting course as well. So I'd done my basic training where you just get beasted. A bunch of the guys on the course were like, yeah, we're signed up for Cardiff half as well. And I was like, oh, okay, like I'll definitely come with you guys then, because I was thinking about not doing it. Um, and yeah, I rocked up and I was the only one there. So I was like, fuck it, let's just go on a bit of a jolly, like try and go as fast as I can. Did a 1:45. Then I had like a week off. I then did another 2 week firefighting course, which was about fire behavior. So it was all full kit, under air, going into fires, learning how to rescue people from fires, navigate your way around burning buildings, things like that. So another 2 weeks of a beasting. Took a week off. Then I did a strongman competition, which I equally didn't train for. And then 2 weeks after that was my ultra. So yeah, just went straight for the ultra. I was meant to do a marathon in between at some point, which I just didn't bother doing. Turned up to my ultra and finished within 1 minute of the cutoff time. And that sort of like started me on this path of signing up for stupid things that I'm definitely underprepared for. Yeah.
And then did the podcast become like a natural thing where it just, yeah, I'm going to do a podcast, and it just happened?
Um, the thing with me is I'm really like impatient. So when I have an idea, if I don't act on it within like a week, I know that it's never going to happen. And I hate having ideas that never happen. So once I've got an idea, like I just try and act on it. Um, and we'll probably get a bit more into my past a bit later on. But basically, I had like a few years off challenges after 2019 for various reasons. Um, Started struggling with like depression and stuff. So I set myself 12 ridiculously hard challenges called the 12 Labours Project that I'm doing. Um, and that's based on the story of Hercules and his 12 Labours. And that was at the start of 2023 because I just needed something to challenge myself to get out of this sort of depression. And when I started it, like I decided like I was going to cut all my hair off. I've kept my hair short since. And I was just gonna like go out for these challenges, but I wanted to find more people like me, because everyone I knew, like I'd do these things, and they would just be like, "Oh, you're stupid, you're crazy. Like, what's the point in doing that?" And I just wanted to sort of fit in somewhere. I I don't like being different, but at the same time, I don't want to be someone else. I like who I am. So I found someone on Instagram who lived just in Barry, so not that far from me, who was also into doing stupid things. His name's Taylor Mason. And I messaged him. I was like, look, do you want to meet up? Like, I would just want to talk to you, find out about like how you set your challenges, like what sort of things interest you, how you go about training for them, sponsorship, all of that sort of stuff. So we met up and we was talking. And then we met up a second time. And on the second time I'd met him, I was just like, I really feel like we should start like a podcast and a business together based around like fitness and like adventure and like have a bit of a spin on it. And he was like, yeah, like let's keep talking about it and plan it out. And I was like, yeah, okay, like come around my house this weekend and we'll sit down and we'll put a bit of a plan together. Little did he know, I just went home and bought a bunch of podcasting equipment and by the time that he came round, it was all set up, and I was like, right, let's record our first episode. So yeah, we recorded 3 episodes that day. So it was the first 3 episodes. We did the Adventure Athletes podcast episode, our first ever one. Then I did like an intro to me and setting yourself challenges. And then he did one talking about he was morbidly obese and then like started doing like world's first, like he pushed a tire up Penavan. He did he called it a hammerthon. So he hit a hammer on a tire, like a sledgehammer, until he had reached the average gait count of a marathon.
Wow.
Yeah, we just ever since then I was like weekly releases every single week for a year. And we're coming up to that point now, and I'm amazed we got here because yeah, he stopped coming now, and it's just me for the past 6 months.
So I've been lucky enough to come on as a guest, obviously, as you know. And then with the WhatsApp group, which is formed as a result, are you surprised at the community and sort of like the banter that's happened as a result of it?
100%. Like when I started it, like I was saying, like I was trying to find more people like me because I'd never found anyone that sort of understood why I was doing these challenges and like what drives me to do them before. I'd really struggled finding anyone that does anything like me. So when I started it, I was just trying to get on like different coaches from different sports. I had a lot of like weightlifters on. I had a free runner, a surfer, just like a really wide variety of people. But I found some of them still didn't quite understand the sort of more extreme aspect of what we sort of do. So it started off quite slow, and there were points where I thought about giving up because I still wasn't finding that community that I was sort of craving at the time. And then that all, funnily enough, changed when I had Reece Jenkins on, which is when you found out about us. And yeah, after that episode, like everything sort of changed from speaking to him. It just like sparked that excitement in me again, and I was like, I found what I'm looking for. I found someone else that's willing to push themselves beyond what most people think is sensible. And then it's just snowballed from there. Like I've then had you on, I've had Grant on, Lee Davies, like so many incredible people that I would never have met if it wasn't for that podcast. And then that sort of built the community itself. And I just sort of like facilitate it. I just was like, yeah, give me your numbers, guys, and chuck us together. And we're actually going to be running our first event in May, where we're trying to get as many people from the podcast together and as many listeners as we can. So yeah, if you're interested, hit me up.
And what is that event?
So it's not finalized yet, but it's going to be a adventure athletes take on the fan dance. So we're going to be doing the fan dance route, which is a military selection course. It's about 24 kilometers, but you're going over some of the tallest mountains in South Wales, including Penavan. I'm not exactly sure what the twist is going to be yet, but it's going to be exciting. It all really depend on how many people come, I guess, to what I decide to do. But I've got some pretty tasty ideas.
Nice. And that's May the 1st, yes?
May the 6th, I think.
6th, cool.
It's on the May bank holiday, so yeah, it should be easy for people to come.
Do you find this crazy that like someone puts an idea in that WhatsApp group and everyone's like, no one's dismissed it and say, oh, that's nuts. It's like, oh yeah, I fancy that.
Yeah, that's exactly what I love about it. Like I've tried to do things like this before, building like communities around an idea, and I've always really struggled because people don't really engage that much. And then like I started it and I started doubting myself, so that's why I didn't post for like I don't think I posted for like a week or two after creating it. And then I was like, oh, I'm gonna go for it, and I put out like, hi, thanks for coming on my podcast, all of that. And then I was like, can people just introduce yourselves in case the other guests haven't listened to your podcast, just to like get a feel for what you're like. And like it took a day where no one replied, and I was just like, oh, is this going to be a flop again? And then every single person replied, and then seeing other people then posting separate from my post and asking for advice or being like, oh, look what I've done today, and seeing that engagement with each other. And these guys are like complete strangers. I was like blown away that it actually worked, and it's still going, which amazes me. So yeah, fair play.
Can you see a different mindset from those guys in the group to sort of like normal people? Say
100%.
normal people. I think people who don't push themselves. Have
Yeah,
you noticed like one particular trait in them?
there's just this ability to almost not see the negatives in the ideas, and it's like this blind ambition is how I describe it, where they'll just go into things and be like, I wonder if I could do this, whereas a lot of people would sort of turn around and be like, I can't do this because, and they're thinking of all the reasons of like, I might get injured, I'm going to have to take too much time off work, I don't have enough time to do this, and they're coming up with all these excuses in their head, whereas like everyone we've got in that group chat will just be like Ed recently just going, I'm going to cycle across California, and that just came out of nowhere. Like within like a month of coming up with that idea, he was cycling across California, and he didn't think like, oh, I wonder what the weather's going to be like there, because the first week he was in snow, like
Yeah.
shin height snow, and he's cycling, and then like by the end, it's sunny California as you can imagine, but like he didn't think like, oh, it's like January, weather's probably going to be a bit cack. He just was like, oh, I'm just going to sign up and see what happens.
Yeah, it's crazy because I just find that I think we just have the belief that we can do it, or the belief that possibly we could do it, so we just go out and do it.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's crazy little community
it
that
is.
you created, and I think I was messaging Grant today, saying that he is a person that makes me want to do better, and he then replied like, "No, you're amazing. You just astound me. Like you pushing yourself. It's just I think we all play off each other, and it just pushes us forward."
Yeah, I've definitely found that what like with creating this community is before I would sign up for these things, but I would doubt myself a lot. Um, and I'd be like, I'm gonna try and do this thing. And it was like I was saying, that blind ambition of wanting to do it. But then I think that's why I didn't really train for it, because I was in my head, it was almost like if I don't train for it and I fail, then I can blame it on that and be like, oh, you know what, I didn't even train for it, so that's why it didn't happen. um Whereas like now it's like, no, I'm gonna train for things because I can achieve more than I ever thought. And I'm getting that just from like even just running the podcast, like talking to all these incredible people that I've met. um you just feed off their energy and you see what they're doing, and you're like, well, if they can do that, how much more am I capable of? Like a great example is Bob Thomas towing a drum kit 100 miles, and it's like, wow, he can do that, so what more can I achieve? And I feel like this is why I like do it in person as well, because I want to build that connection with it. I want to feed off their energy that you just don't get through a screen. Like you can feel it in person.
So you've touched on it before, the start of this podcast, that you're going to attempt a world record.
I
Can
am.
you explain what it is?
So for a little bit of back context, as part of my 12 Labours project, I told myself that I was going to do these 12 really hard things, and I'm aiming for like one a year, but if I can do more than one a year, great. And at first I'd set these 12, and I completed two of them last year. So I did a 50-mile barefoot walk through the Brecons, and I did the Welsh 3000s, which is the tallest 15 mountains in Wales in under 24 hours. So I'd done those two, and I was like looking at what's next. And through having this podcast, um, like I've already mentioned, like Bob is a stickler for pushing you and making you question how hard you can push yourself. He looked at my list and, like, for example, like the 4448, the David Goggins challenge was on there. And he just looked at that and he was like, that seems a bit easy, doesn't it? And I was like, what do you mean? He was like, well, you've walked 50 miles in 24 hours and you've done the Welsh 3000s. Like, that's going to be too easy. It's not going to challenge you enough. You're not going to learn anything. So I was like, right, you've actually got a point there. And then I like spoke with him for like an hour after the podcast, talking about how I should change my challenges and trying to come up with new ones. And one of the ones that I thought of was a tire tire flip marathon. Um, and I don't know why I thought that in my head. I was like, yeah, I'll try a tire flip marathon. And I did no research into it. It wasn't even going to be this year's challenge. I was meant to be doing an Everest rope climb, which I saw Ross Edgley did. Um, but then, yeah, I was talking to people, and someone said to me, you should check out what the world record is for the tire flip, and you can get in contact with them and see like how they train for it and everything. And I was like, oh yeah, I didn't think of that. And I looked it up, and the world record is only 11 kilometers in 24 hours. So I was like, that seems really achievable. I'm going to be aiming for 42 kilometers, albeit like I wasn't thinking I was going to do it in 24 hours. But now I'm starting to think, yeah, I'll give it a go. I'll go as far as I can in 24 hours, but I'm going to keep going until I hit a marathon. Um, and yeah, it just sort of like spiraled from there. So the official record is called the greatest distance flipping a tire in 24 hours. And like I said, the current record is 11.2 kilometers. So I've got that to beat.
And it's not just a car tire, is it? It's obviously a big tractor tire.
Yeah.
What's the weight of it?
The tractor tire has to be over 100 kilos.
Oh God.
So it's not the heaviest tractor tire in the world, but it's a fair weight.
How's the training going?
I've had one proper training session for it so far, where I timed myself doing 100 tire flips just to get a rough gauge of like a relaxed pace and how long it would take. And it took me about 9 minutes, just shy of 9 minutes. So I think that's a pretty comfortable pace. I've been doing the maths, and each flip is between 1.8 and 2 meters. So I'm going to roughly have to do 20. Well, I figured it out as like 23,400 tire flips. But I've rounded that up to 24,000, which works out at 1,000 an hour, which is also then 16 per minute. To get the marathon in 24 hours, which, like I said, that's a goal, but that's super ambitious and quite an unsustainable pace. But it is also 4 times the world record. So as long as I get kind of close to it, I'll be happy.
Are you doing any strength work in the gym around sort of like your lower back and everything?
Yeah. So like I mentioned earlier, I've got myself a coach now, which is simply just for ease, because I coach, that's my job. And I always overthink my own programming, and I try and fit everything in because I enjoy so many things. Like, I love rock climbing, I love doing Olympic lifting, I love powerlifting, I love doing gymnastics, free running, just every type of training you can imagine, like plyometrics, but I also like long distance running, but I also like sprinting. So I always try and overload my program. And if I miss one session, or if one session goes badly, I always try and pick it apart and change it. So I was like, I'm just going to get a coach, so then I don't have to think about my own training. I can just follow what's on there. And yeah, my coach is actually Grant. So Grant's doing all my training stuff now.
Nice.
And he's planning for my ultra, but he's also helping me with the tire flip stuff. So a lot of the focus is going to be running, but he is also planning me 3 strength sessions a week. just to sort of bulletproof stuff. I've already had a bit of a whinge at him being like, oh, I don't like these exercises. And he's just basically been like, well, you're going to have to do them because I'm your coach, sort of thing. So that's exactly what I need.
What ultra have you signed up for?
I've signed up for the Rhythm.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah, I really wanted to do the slam this year, but with the tire flip and with work and trying to get time off work, because my main job is gymnastics coaching, as you know, and that's evenings and weekends. So getting time off, like I know it's only 6 days throughout 6 months, but when I've got like big competitions that we're focusing on and things like that, I couldn't justify it. So yeah, I've got the Rhythm off, and that's the one I'm going for.
Nice and local as well.
Yeah, that's why I chose it. But it does work out to be 2 weeks after my world record attempt.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
Yeah, that's gonna suck.
It is, yeah, but I've set myself some quite ambitious goals for it as well. So
Good,
fingers
good.
crossed.
So again, you touched on it earlier on about your mental health. Do you want to elaborate a bit more?
Yeah, so I've always sort of struggled with my mental health. It's been going on since I was fairly young. Um, just like a lot of like depression and anxiety. I did get like I was going to therapy when I was 18, I want to say, to try and get diagnosed for bipolar. And we started going through the process of it. And I ended up, because I was self referred, I could just withdraw myself whenever I wanted. So when it started getting closer to the official sort of diagnosis, I was looking up what that meant for me. And I didn't like what I was reading for the extreme situations. So I just withdrew against my therapist's recommendation. Um, so I never officially went there, but there's like quite a strong chance that I am bipolar. Um, so that obviously plays up quite a bit in my life. But it got really bad in 2020 through COVID. Now, I do want to touch on COVID a bit more later, but essentially, I didn't even realize COVID was happening because I was still working. I was part of the fire service, so I was still going to work, still doing like my day job and everything. And I was still training a lot because I was a firefighter. Like, what else is there to do but to keep fit? Um, and then I got made homeless. I was living with someone that was vulnerable. They owned the house and they gave me 3 days to move out or quit the fire service, which I wasn't prepared to do in the middle of a pandemic. So yeah, I was made homeless for about 6 months. I started off sleeping on the streets. When the fire station found out, they let me sleep on the fire station, which was quite risky of them because it meant that if I got COVID and I was staying there, the whole station would be down for 2 weeks in isolation, minimum. So that was a really risky move by the fire service, but I 100% appreciate like what they did for me. They were there for me in my hour of need. I know they've gone through a bit of a review recently, but I do not have a bad word to say about South Wales Fire and Rescue Service. Astounding people, a lot of them. And they really helped me out through that time. They would be like the guys I was training and fighting fires with would bring me food. They would come in and check on me. I didn't have a sleeping bag or a pillow. So my manager actually just brought me his sleeping bag and pillow. So at least I had something to keep myself warm. It wasn't ideal because obviously I'm trying to sleep on the sofa on the station. The bells drop at like 1 o'clock in the morning for a grass fire. I get woken up. That is the worst alarm clock you can imagine. And then 5 minutes later, everyone's rushing into the station. They leave, try and go back to sleep. They come back an hour or two later, wake me up again. They're all like sitting there having a cup of tea, and I'm just lying on the sofa like I really just want to sleep. And then they all go home to bed, and I'm just stuck there, and then I couldn't sleep. So that was my life for a little while. And it hit me quite hard at first, but after a little while, you just sort of get used to it. And I just got caught up in training. I was training, I was doing like 3 sessions a day. Um, I was still obviously fighting fires. It was grass fire season, so we was being called out all the time. Even when I wasn't on shift, because I was on station, I was like, I'll just jump on whenever you guys get a call. I'll be an extra pair of hands. So I didn't really notice what was going on in the rest of the world. And then as lockdown started to ease, I found myself somewhere to live. Um, and the station were like, look, take a week off to sort out your new flat and take some time off, like you've had a rough year. Yeah, give yourself a week off. So I took the week off and I went on a climbing trip because it was as we was sort of allowed to start traveling about again. I went to Dartmoor for this climbing trip, and on that trip, I took quite a nasty fall. It was probably about 12, 15 foot onto loose boulders, and I snapped my ankle in half to the point where I was non-weight bearing for 6 months. And again, me being me, I carried on training through my injury. Obviously, I couldn't walk or run or anything, but I was like, I can tie an elastic band round my cast and do some leg extensions to try and keep some muscle. I can do pull-ups, I can do push-ups. Like I can do like quite a lot of physical work, which I would do for at least an hour a day. But then it's like the rest of the time, you don't really have any motivation to do anything. And that's when lockdown, like the second lockdown, was kicking in as well. So no one could even come visit me. Like my family couldn't come down, my friends couldn't come down. I just found this place. I was living on my own for the first time in my life. Like I'd never lived on my own before that. And yeah, it started to get really lonely. And that's when my depression started to build again. But because I had the cast on, I was sort of using that as an excuse to feel bad.
Yeah.
And so I was just like, you know what? Like, it's okay to feel shit because your ankle's fucked. Like, everyone would feel shit in this situation. Um, so I almost didn't let it affect me too much. But then when I was allowed to start walking and start training again, the doctor was telling me to do couch to 5K. And I was like, what do you mean do couch to 5K? I've run an ultra marathon, like couch to 5K. And then I tried it and it was the hardest thing I'd ever done. I really struggled. Feeling like I can't even do a light jog for a kilometer, that's when it really hit me that I was like, oh shit, like this is bad. I can't do any of the things I wanted to do. And that it got to the point where towards the end of 2020, I wanted to kill myself, if I'm being honest. And I've not told a lot of people this, but I tried to, and luckily I failed. I don't know. Of I was going to say I don't know what I'd have done if I hadn't failed, but I'd be dead. So yeah, just thinking about it is crazy that that was like 3, 4 years ago now, and how much I've done in that time since. And
How did you pull yourself out of it?
this this is where the challenges came back in. So like a couple of weeks after that attempt, I set myself the challenge of doing 1,000 pull-ups in a day. I was like, I just need to like clear my mind and almost put myself through some suffering physically to almost represent what I felt mentally. I do feel like sometimes in the past, and I've sort of reflected on this through therapy with Bigmoose, which I'll probably talk about later as well, is that I was doing like the right things, like challenging myself and doing all these things, but I was doing them for the wrong reasons. And I feel like some of what I was doing was almost like a cry for help. It was trying to show people, like I said, physically how I felt mentally, just putting myself through the wars almost. And the challenges do help, especially now that I understand my motivation for the challenges. But for the next 2 years after that, I didn't want to do anything. Like, but 2021 and 2022, um, even though I didn't quite know it, like I was just falling into this worse and worse depression. Um, and there were times where I would just randomly have these breakdowns. I'd just sit in my car for like an hour and a half, and I would just cry and not want to get out of my car. Um, and yeah, I didn't know why. And it just got to the point where I was like, I need to do something about this. And then yeah, that's when the 12 Labours project came about. And through doing that, like I tried to do the Welsh 3000s and I failed the first time I tried because I just was completely underprepared, but I just wanted that challenge back in my life. Um, but physically my body wasn't able to do it. And that hit hard. That was the first time I've ever said I was going to do something and didn't. Um, but then through carrying on with these challenges, like when I did my 50-mile barefoot walk and I started pushing through the pain, and despite whatever I felt, like I just kept pushing, that was the first time in like 3 years that I'd felt like myself again.
So by giving yourself really physical and mental purpose, you sort of like pulled yourself out of it a bit. You gave yourself a bit of direction, I suppose, didn't it? Something to aim for.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't even sort of like get to that point where they know they've got to provide themselves with a purpose or can snap out of it. So how's the therapy going now with Bigmoose?
So I've graduated therapy. My graduation was actually the last day of my 496 challenge.
Nice.
So I timed it perfectly because I went through most of it in start of December, towards the end, and then I had one session start of January, and my therapist was like, "Do you feel like you need another one, or shall we take some time to see how you cope with what we've gone through?" And I was like, "Yeah, let's take some time. I'll take some time to process everything." I was just starting a second job, and I was like, "I just want to see how I cope with everything I've got going on in my life." So then I put it off, and then I started feeling a bit down again towards the end of my 496, and I was questioning why I was doing the 496 and why I put myself through this pain and everything. So I was like, I want another session if I can. He was like, yeah, that's fine. And I was like, how's the 31st? And he was like, yeah, that's good for me. But he didn't know the significance of that. I like in my head, I was like, it's going to be my last day. Like if I can't figure it out on the last day, like what am I going to do? Like where am I going to go from here? We had a really good session, and that's when we figured out that although I was doing the right things, I was setting structure, I was training, I was eating healthy, um, all of this. He said like the main reason was because I felt like I had to be suffering to be able to provide any benefit to others. Like if I'm gonna be this podcast host and run a business about adventure and athletes and like everything that I'm doing, like I've got to be suffering to provide value for people. And if I'm not suffering, then I'm not providing any value. And he was like, you do deserve to feel good as well. Like it's not everyone else that gets this. Like you should feel good too. And we started just digging into the reasons behind it until we got to a place where I could accept that I need to be doing better for myself in order to then provide even more value for others.
That's cool. So I know you said on your podcast that you struggle with reflection. It's sort of like when like to find the positives in the bad things that are happening in your life. Um, how are you doing it now? Are you can you see any positives from like what's happened to you?
Um, I can, but at the same time I can't. It's quite an unusual one. Yeah, I do still sort of start falling into the trap of thinking that the main way that I've provided benefit for people is by going through the hard stuff. So I know it makes me more empathetic and everything. Um, and I can understand people that are struggling a lot more and see the signs of other people that are struggling, even if they don't know that I've struggled myself. I then have better tools to reach out and spot the signs, um, which I was awful at before. Um, I'll be honest, like I was really bad at telling when people are going through a hard time and knowing what to do. I'd sort of just be the person that's like, "You okay, mate?" Not really know what to do and how to interact with them. But now I'm a lot better at just being like, "Look, I'm here to listen if you need anything." Um, or just reaching out and just being like, "Oh, do you want to go out for some food or something?" If I know that someone's been struggling, but not bring up the fact that they've been struggling, not make a big deal of it, just be there for them without having to force it. Um, so I know I do still fall into that trap in thinking that I would have only had to go through this bad stuff to then have a positive. But I'm starting to see that there's a lot of good things that happen anyway. And I just need to take time for myself and not put so much pressure on myself. Um, One thing that I did notice is when I was doing my runs, there was always these benches on random hills in like the most strange places that I would always run past. And I'd always think like, I wonder why they've put the bench there. Um, and now like as part of like my therapy and everything and self-care, I'll just sit down just halfway through my run, which I'd have never have done before. But I'll just sit on that bench and just look out across and be like, why did they put this bench here? What's there to look at? And really just trying to appreciate what's around me. And like I'll do this in the pissing rain, um, just to try and get that time for myself back.
Well, I think that if you didn't get kicked out those couple of years ago, you would be sat in that apartment with that room to do your podcast. You wouldn't have pushed yourself to do the 3000s. You're doing a fucking world record this year. So I think without all that pain and because that steers you in this direction. So there's your positives. Look at the community you've built on WhatsApp just from your podcast. Look
Yeah.
at the things that people are doing from um, just chatting to other guests on the podcast. By creating this community, you've created a group of people who want to push themselves to do a lot more than they're capable of doing. So
Yeah.
there's another positive. You've got so many positives, so many.
I'll be honest, I do struggle giving myself credit for things. I find it hard to hear personally. So like when people say it, like you just saying that stuff to me, like I know it's true and like I can feel that it's true, but it doesn't feel like it almost doesn't feel right hearing it from someone else. But like I've started getting it a lot more recently. Like my dad is in the best shape that he's ever been in. And it's because I've been helping him with his training and like giving him program ideas. And I challenged him to do the Bring Sally Up challenge, and he's done it 6 times now.
Nice.
And like he got like a minute in the first time he tried it, and yeah, now he's done it 6 times. He did it 2 days on the trot as well for one of them. He's now running as well. He wants to do a marathon or an ultra marathon, and he's 52, and he's
Wow.
started running like this year or last year. Um, my mum now wants to start running. Both of them are saying that it's not just the fact that I'll like train them and give them free stuff. it's just how I am and how they like see me pushing myself, and they then start questioning if they could do more than they're capable, and then having like I get people messaging me about my podcast being like, wow, thank you so much for this episode, like you reached out to me. I've had this guy George Griffiths, he literally reached out and asked for a shout out because he loves the podcast so much and it inspires him to get out the door every run he goes on. And yeah, I'm just starting to get all these messages. And it's funny you should bring this up because this morning I literally got a message off one of the parents of my gymnasts saying, I'm not going to say his name, but it was like, oh, like my son has to dress up as their hero for World Book Day, and he's dressing up as you, and he's going to run round lunchtime barefoot.
Oh wow!
And I was just like,
How does that make you feel?
like an imposter. I don't feel like I deserve it because in my head I haven't done a lot. But then when people start listing off the things that I have done, then I start to like see it, and then in my head like Welsh 3000s, I'm like, oh yeah, but people have done it faster than me. People have done it like back to back 3 times. Like I'm really not doing a lot compared to other people. And I guess this is kind of the negative of my podcast is I'm getting on people that are doing incredible things like we've mentioned. And I do kind of feel like I'm not deserving of being in that group yet.
I disagree. Also, what you got to think is you're telling the story of those guys. Without you, that story of what they're doing won't get out there. And that's another positive. I just thought of something. How many messages have you had around sort of like, oh, you've inspired me to go for therapy around Bigmoose?
Um, I've I've only had the one so far. And he's going to be fine me bringing it up. But it was Mike Jenkins, so he came on the podcast recently. That was from the last day of my 496. Is halfway through the 496, I met up with Jeff at the Bigmoose headquarters. I sat down with him, and I wanted to push Bigmoose and thank them for what they've done for me, and I wanted to get them on my podcast, and I want to like share their story. Like I want to do loads of things for them, and I came away having signed up to raise £10,000 for him because it's Jeff, and that's what you do when you talk to Jeff. And I had this incredible desire to like do more. He's such an inspirational person. So I think that was like day 12 of the 496. And you can see if you go through all of my videos on day 12, you can see the switch of I was just like, yeah, I'm doing this thing. It's okay. Yeah, like I'm out running again. And then I switch and I'm like all of a sudden trying to see the positives and trying to be like, yeah, I'm fundraising for Bigmoose. I get to do this. I get to share this with people. I get to raise money for a cause that I believe in. And then because I was doing that, it made me realize I should be more vulnerable myself when putting stuff out there. And then that's when day 25 hit. And is it 25 or 26 where I'm like 3K into a run and I just start crying because I'm in so much pain and I feel like a failure. And I'm trying to record, but every time I try and talk, just tears are streaming down my face. And it took me 2K to actually film like a 30-second video. And like my 2K was like 10-minute kilometers, so like that's 20 minutes of trying to record a 30-second video. Like it was insane. But I was like, no, I have to be vulnerable if I'm doing this because I'm asking people to go to therapy when they're in their darkest place. Like how can I do that if I'm only sharing the positives? Like I need to share the negatives, which is why I've then like admitted publicly now that I tried to kill myself. It's all coming from that vulnerable place, and I feel like terrible saying it, and I hate watching that video back. But from that, Mike reached out to me and was like, I want to join you on the last day of your challenge. Like, is it okay if I do that? And I was like, yeah, like come down. Like I'm setting up this group run. I'll try and get as many people as I can out. And he joined me, and from just running and talking with him, we was talking about like his life and what he struggles with. And I was like, you could really benefit from therapy, and like Bigmoose do it for free. Like I highly recommend them. And he's currently in therapy with them now from that conversation. And he's also now fundraising for them as well. So yeah, to see that knock-on effect, the positive effect it's had, and even if he just goes on and inspires one person to go to therapy, like that's a win in my eyes.
Have you seen a difference in sort of like men opening up with their vulnerability over the last couple of months since yourself, myself, and a few others on the podcast start opening up?
I'm starting to see a difference, I think. Like, but it's through my own vulnerability that it starts allowing others to be vulnerable, I think. I think another like reason why I do my podcast in person is I get to talk to the person beforehand, and I share my story with them before we start recording. One, so I don't have to do it when we're recording. So that was like a nice barrier for me. But two, because they then feel more comfortable with me, and it allows them to be vulnerable. Like I found before I started doing that, like there was a bit of a block between me and the guest, like an unintentional one, because it's a person I've never met before coming into my house, and then I'm asking about like their life and the like deepest, darkest things that go on in their head. Um, but yet they don't know anything about me. So I was like, I need to be vulnerable to allow that vulnerability. And I'm still trying to push that now. Like that's why I'm trying to go on podcasts and share my story. Is if people can see me, and like I said, I'm getting messages about people that are inspired by me. If they see me as this like almost like unattainable person that's doing these incredible things and pushing beyond limits and being this really strong and resilient person, if they see me being vulnerable and being like, no, I've got challenges too, like I'm struggling, this is how I'm coping with it, then maybe they can look at themselves and be like, you know what, I am actually struggling, I need help. And that's all I'm trying to achieve at the moment, is to get as many people to get help as possible, like those that really need it but are scared to reach out. Like they just got to reach out, and they've got to see examples of people that have done that.
And therapy is not scary at all, is it?
No, no, it's intimidating at first, like going through the application and everything, because one, it's an unknown. Unknowns are scary. And two, it's almost, you feel defeated because you're trying to battle this thing. You're like clashing heads constantly with your mental health, and you're trying to convince yourself that you're okay and that you're dealing with it. And then to admit defeat, like that's what it feels like. It feels like you're admitting defeat, and you do feel like weak and vulnerable at first, and it's scary. But as soon as you get into it and you start seeing the benefits, then you're just like, why did I not do this sooner? Like, I've been through therapy before Bigmoose as well. Like, it's not been my first time of therapy. It's been the second time that I've enjoyed my therapy and felt like I've got something out of it. But I've been to therapy like 5 times now, I think. Um, and even then, I was still hesitant to reach out for help when I felt like I needed it. So it is definitely something that, like, no matter how experienced you are, it's going to be a struggle to make that first step, but you can't get the other steps without the first one.
Yeah, we put our son in for therapy start this year with Bigmoose, and within 2 therapy sessions, we've seen a difference in him. We couldn't believe the change in him. So they even like deal with kids and everything. But on one of the sessions, Jeff was actually at the office, and he started talking to my son, and we were in there well over our time. And my son came away wanting to do more for Bigmoose as well. So he signed up for their big fun run, and um, he said, "Dad, I've already done a 5K park run. I want to do a 10K." So he's currently raising money for a 10K park run, no, 10K fun run for Bigmoose on the 14th of April. Just because even my son can see, so like how inspiring Jeff is, but also how much he wants to help and be that role model for Bigmoose as well. It's a very strange charity. It empowers you. It's very odd.
It's
You just
unlike
want to do a lot more
anything
for.
else I've been part of. Like, it is absolutely phenomenal what they're doing. And fair play to your son. What an absolute hero. Um, like that is inspiring. Like, how old's your son?
10.
10. And he's doing a 10K and raising money. Like, when I was 10, I was probably like running around playing with crayons.
So when I do the coastal path now in July, he's coming with us, and he actually wants to run 10K every day when I'm doing it.
Yeah, I remember you telling me that.
Yeah,
That's
which is
what, like
crazy.
150K in total he wants to do.
About that, yeah, over 2 weeks, yeah. So yeah,
Incredible.
fair play to him. Like it won't be all in one like 10K stint. We're gonna sort of like break it up into sort of like morning, afternoon, and then sort of like evening. But yeah, he wants to do it.
Fair play. That is inspiring.
Yeah, I just think that the whole trip will just be amazing for him.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's why I want to stick it through as well. Is I want to get to the end for him. So that's my drive, I suppose, and the fact that I put it out on social media. So yeah, it's holding me accountable. I think that I
That's
think social media is great for that. That if you want to try and push yourself, you put it out there.
yeah.
And if you're the type of person like we are, I think Jenks mentioned it in the last episode that you recorded with him. That by putting it out there on social media, you hold yourself accountable, and you don't want to say fail because you just want to go fuck you to all the people who think you're going to fail. And that's another drive for you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
that's a really good starting point for making the change. I think reaching out to people, having someone there to, like, say you said you're going to run 5 miles and you only run 3, having someone that can look over your training and be like, why didn't you do the 5? Like, what's going on? And it's almost like it's not doing it in a berating way. It's doing it in a checking in, like, is everything okay? What happened? Like, there might be a genuine reason you didn't, but there might just be like, I felt lazy, and then they can be like, come on, you can do better than that. That's a really good start. And I think that's what comes in with social media, because there are so many people that will just be like, what's going on? Like when I said I was doing my 496, I've said this so many times now, but the first message I got was of Bob Thomas being like, why aren't you doing it in miles? And he wasn't saying it in like a, like, your shit kind of way. It was, well, the way I took it was like, what is your reason for not doing it in miles? Because you were more than capable of doing it. Um, and for me, it was time. And I was like, I'm starting a second job. Like, I'm not going to have time to work 2 jobs, run the podcast, and run 30 miles in a day. Um, and they was like, yeah, fair enough. There's a genuine reason there. But having him check on me did make me question, like, why did I choose that easier option? So I think social media is great in that way. But I feel like over time, the less you like can rely on those people, the better, to make it then like an internal thing of like, I'm just going to do this for me, and whatever else happens, happens. Like, the only reason why I shout about my challenges now is because I'm fundraising for Bigmoose. If it wasn't for that, I'd probably just do what I did before, not tell people I'm doing it, rock up, do it, and then maybe put a post up afterwards being like, I did this today. because I don't feel like I need that external validation for these things. And I guess part of that comes from what I was saying earlier, where people would just call me crazy or stupid for doing them. I've just learned to have that drive within me. But I feel like that's way more beneficial than having to rely on others. But relying on others is how you get started. So it's kind of like a catch-22.
Yeah, I noticed on my profile on Instagram that I've not really posting a lot about like what I'm doing recently. Because well, back last year, about this time last year, I think I posted like every run, but now I'm not bothered, to be honest, about like telling people what I'm doing, because it's a lot of hard work and it's going unnoticed. But my reward will be end of July, hopefully. But
The
yeah,
reward is going out and doing it, to be fair.
yeah, the whole
That's what I
experience
found.
of it. Yeah, the experience of it. So over the last year now, with podcast, has there been a guest where you just thought, wow, what a badass?
um, so many of them, to be fair, especially like since Reese. Nothing against the guests before Reese, they were all absolutely incredible people in their own right. But the ones that I've sort of connected with the most, and I've seen that similar mindset of me, have all sort of come after Reese or like around that sort of time, and I've built that connection. Um, I've probably like shouted them out already, like Reese, Bob, Grant, Lee, like them four are the ones that come like top of mind when I like talk about people that have inspired me, because after each of their podcasts, I've gone out and like I've been like, wow, I can go out and do more. Like you had Andrew on as well, like
Yeah,
not the fastest runner ever, but he's absolutely phenomenal. The way that he's just relentlessly going for stuff, and he's just like, yeah, I want to do better for myself, and there's no like big story behind it. He's just like, I was overweight. I didn't want to be overweight. I want to do better for my kids. And then he goes from being like not able to run like 100 meters to running ultra marathons. And it's just like,
he's he's kind of make me feel really guilty at the moment, because every weekend he's posting another race. He's
yeah,
phenomenal.
he is incredible. And like yeah, just everyone that's come on my podcast has got their own incredible story. Like at first, I was trying to get my friends on, and then Taylor was trying to get like some people that he knew on as well. Um, and there would be some guests that I connected with really well that he didn't, and vice versa. But then since he stopped coming, um, and I've been able to just book in the guests that I want, I found like I've just been getting more and more inspired, because like every guest that I book on, there's a reason why I want them there. Like I'm genuinely interested in everyone that comes on. And that's why they're there in the first place. And I don't care how many followers you have. Like I know a lot of podcasts are like get people with big followers, you get big listenings. Um, and like one of my guests that's coming on, I think it's next week or maybe the week after. He's got like 300 followers on Instagram. He's really like no one really knows who he is. But he's going to be trying to climb up Everest in full fire kit. And I'm just like,
Yeah.
I want to talk to you. Like, that's it. Like, I want to get to know more about you and what makes you tick, and hopefully build you into this little community I've got. And that's what's happening in the podcast. And yeah, like I've met so many incredible people now. Like another one that inspires me, Terry Rosamond, running the Rockman, Team Rockman. Incredible. Like what he's doing for other people is phenomenal. Um, yeah, it's just, and like you started this podcast after coming on mine. He's restarted up his podcast after coming on mine, and seeing this like effect of people that are like, you know what, I'm going to do more from doing it. It does make me happy. Like Mike, he's going to be starting his podcast soon. Um, and yeah, I'm amazed at the effect that the podcast is having. Like all of them inspire me, and I feel like they're inspiring each other now, and it's just growing. It's like a compound effect of like you've got your is it the Dragon Cannonball event?
Yeah, yeah, Dragon Cannonball.
Like you started that, and it's like wow, like, and everyone's going to be behind you, and if you need any support, like we're here. um like me with my world record attempt, like the amount of support I've had from the group, and like the advice I'm getting, and people saying that they're going to come down and support me, even like the guys that live in London, they're like, yeah, we're coming down to support you for your event. And I'm just, yeah, I'm so thankful for all of you guys.
Yeah, it's not a bad little community you've created, is it?
No, they're, yeah, some of the, well, they are the literally the best people I've ever met. um Alongside the guys that I worked with on the fire station, I can't thank them enough. And then like a couple of my mates as well. Like between all of you guys together, like I couldn't ask for a better bunch of people.
And I think that's the perfect way to end it. That's just been, yeah, that's been nice. Great talking to you.
Yeah, it's been great to catch up, mate.
Yeah, how did you feel on this podcast now, being on the other side?
Strange, like opening up like that. I was so nervous coming into this. And I was trying to bug you earlier, being like, what shall I talk about? Have you got anything that I should do? And you was just like, be afraid, mate. And I was just, fuck.
So what's your next challenge now? What's up next for you? Is it the world record?
Um,
Anything in between?
so I've got a few side quests that I'm looking at. I do want to do the 4448. Um, I've never done that, and it just seems interesting. And although I probably can't count it as a labor, like, yeah, it's going to be a side quest now. I'm still going to do it. It doesn't have to be like a big world record or anything for it to be a challenge, and it doesn't have to be like super challenging for it to be enjoyable. So yeah, I'm going to give that a go. I've got the meetup in May. So whatever I plan for that, I'm going to be joining in with. Obviously, I've got a few listeners that are coming down to that, which should be incredible to actually meet up with a few of the people that are listening to the podcast. Um, I'm running my first rock climbing course through Adventure Athletes at the end of this month. It's going to be 1st of April, running a rock climbing course. So if anyone wants to learn how to climb outdoors, like let me know. Like I'll get you booked on the course. I think we've got a few spaces left, so I'll be interested.
I'll put all the links on the description below for anyone who wants to quickly jump across to you.
Incredible. Cheers, mate.
Will you be joining us on the 30th of March for It's Why We Run Cardiff Meet? It's a Saturday. I think Dan's planning it for about 10 o'clock.
I'll be coaching, sadly.
Again, I'll put the link for everyone who wants to turn up below. But I've already started sending out invites to people. So yeah, just keep an eye on social media over the next couple of days for more info.
Yeah, if you can get out, guys, 100% recommend going. Like the Why We Run team are incredible. I actually recorded a podcast with Dan, which is coming out this week, so that'll be interesting.
Yeah, a special group of people.
It really is. Between like, I've only met Grant and Dan so far, but yeah, and you, Nath, obviously. So yeah, like 3 amazing people right there. I've got James coming on my podcast next week, Cookie.
Oh, Cookie.
Yeah, so he's
nice.
coming on, and I might have Jen coming on as well because they're both coming down for the Bigmoose event next week.
Yeah.
So I've managed to try and convince them to come visit the studio. So if all goes well, they'll be on my podcast next week. And then
yeah, so
Sophie's
if people don't know, not aware, on the 16th of March, is it 16th of March? Yeah, 16th of March, Bigmoose is having an evening down St. David's Hotel on the Bay where we have guest speakers, and one of them being Cookie from It's Why We Run. So again, I'll put links in the description below if you want to buy tickets. I think there's a couple still available. yeah, it'd be a great day with about 200 guests, all who just love the run. So yeah, pop down.
If you've been inspired by my story, please donate to Bigmoose through my fundraiser. Really appreciate it. I'm trying to raise 10 grand and I've got like 750 quid so far, which is amazing in its own right. But yeah, it's not quite 10 grand. And then if anyone needs help, reach out to Bigmoose, like 100%. They could change your life.
And congratulations, Jen, finishing second at the St. David's half marathon, which was actually along the coast.
Did she?
So, yeah, second.
Oh, well done, Jen. Fair play.
So a tough little run for her because I know the St. David's quite well, and yeah, it's gnarly. So well done, Jen. Okay, thanks for listening today. Episode 9 done with Will. Check him out over at Adventure Athlete on Instagram, and the links in the descriptions below. Remember, if you want to sign up for the Dragon Cannonball 870, go to SI Entries. You'll need a team of 4 and a camper van. Next week, Reese will be back. We've got a big guest coming on again next week, someone that's you would have recognized from YouTube and Instagram, who is hilarious on Instagram, actually. So we're really excited for this guest next week. So tune in next week as well. But again, thank you for listening. We've hit 60,000 views on YouTube, which is just astounding. Thank you very much. See you next week. Bye.